That was Tucson Sheriff Chris Nanos alongside John Edwards from the FBI giving an update on the Nancy Guthrie case, answering press questions and urging if anyone from the public has any information to come forward. Stay tuned for...
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump is hosting Colombian President Gustavo Petro for a White House meeting today. That's after months of high tension between the two leaders. The U.S. military shoots down an Iranian drone over the Arabian Sea. What the U.S. says about the activity of the drone. Bill and Hillary Clinton agreed to testify amid a congressional investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The former president and former Secretary of State initially refused to comply with the House subpoena. A recent poll shows the majority of Americans agree that photo ID should be required for voting. We have a panel discussion about this. The Department of Homeland Security plans to issue body cameras to all its federal officers on the ground in Minneapolis. And a federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration from ending humanitarian protection for Haitians.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Trump is meeting with Colombian President Gustavo Petro today at the White House. The talks aims to repair strained ties after a year of public clashes and political differences.
I mean, he's been very nice over the last month or two. He was certainly critical before that, but somehow after the Venezuelan raid, he became very nice. He changed his attitude very much. So, no, I look forward to seeing him. He's coming in. We're going to be talking about drugs because tremendous amounts of drugs come out of his country. And I look forward to see. We're going to have a good meeting. Yeah.
Petro's Washington agenda also includes political, academic, and business events. And the U.S. is working to rebuild diplomatic relations with Venezuela. Laura Does, the United States' new top envoy to Venezuela. She recently arrived in Caracas as the Trump administration aims to reopen an embassy there for the first time in nearly 7 years.
Our presence here today marks a new chapter, and I'm ready to begin work. Let's get to it.
Doe previously was the ambassador to Honduras and later to Nicaragua. She says her team wants to implement a three-phase plan in Venezuela. The first step is the stabilization of the country and the restoration of safety. Second, the recovery of the economy for the benefit of Venezuelan people. And third, the transition toward a Venezuela that is friendly, stable, prosperous, and democratic. And the U.S. Navy shot down an Iranian drone today. It came as the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier was transiting the Arabian Sea. U.S. Central Command said an Iranian Shahed 139 drone was aggressively approaching the aircraft carrier with unclear intent. The drone continued to fly toward the ship despite de-escalatory measures taken by U.S. forces. The U.S. military said the aircraft carrier was 500 miles south of Iran's coast and in international waters. An F-35C fighter jet from the carrier shot down the Iranian drone to protect the ship and personnel on board. No U.S. service member was harmed in the process. U.S. Central Command said in a statement, quote, "Continued Iranian harassment and threats in international waters and airspace will not be tolerated." Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify amid a congressional investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Their decision comes after they initially refused to comply with a House subpoena. The House Oversight Committee is seeking details about the Clintons' relationship to Epstein. The disgraced financier was found dead in his jail cell in 2019 as he was awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. The Oversight Committee voted to proceed with criminal contempt of Congress charges last month after the Clintons' refusal to testify. The Clintons have criticized the probe as partisan. House Oversight Chairman James Comer said the former president and former Secretary of State will be deposed on February 26th and 27th. The White House says President Trump wants congressional lawmakers to pass the SAVE Act on election integrity. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt explaining Trump's position earlier today.
What the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term. And he spoke with the speaker directly about that yesterday, about the need to get that bill on the floor for a vote, because it provides very common sense measures for voting in our country, such as voter ID. I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would disagree with the idea of requiring citizens of this country to present an ID before casting a ballot in a federal election, or frankly in any election.
The funding bill faced resistance from some Republicans who objected to the absence of the SAVE Act, which would require voter ID in federal elections. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna initially opposed the measure, but later reversed her position, saying she had been told Senate Majority Leader John Thune would bring the bill to the floor. The press secretary also said talks with Iran will move forward. Listen.
I just spoke with Special Envoy Witkoff, and these talks, as of right now, are still scheduled. President Trump is always wanting to pursue diplomacy first, but obviously it takes two to tango. You need a willing partner to achieve diplomacy, and that's something that Special Envoy Witkoff is intent on exploring and discussing. As always, though, of course, the president has a range of options on the table with respect to Iran as commander-in-chief. I think they learned that quite well last year with the strike in Operation Midnight Hammer, which was wildly successful and obliterated their nuclear capabilities. But those talks will continue later this week as far as we're concerned right now.
Now, on the Russia-Ukraine war, the White House said Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner will be in Abu Dhabi tomorrow for another round of trilateral talks. Meanwhile, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is defending her presence at a Fulton County, Georgia elections office. The visit occurred while FBI agents carried out a court-authorized search warrant. Gabbard said President Trump asked her to observe the operation, adding that she has the authority to take action related to election integrity. Gabbard says interference in elections is a threat to the republic and a national security threat. She said neither she nor the president directed agents during the search. The FBI says the warrant is tied to a federal lawsuit seeking voting records from the 2020 election. Some Democratic lawmakers are criticizing Gabbard's involvement, raising concerns about the role of intelligence agencies in domestic matters. Gabbard says officials must determine whether foreign or domestic interference has occurred to protect the integrity of future elections. A poll's been making the rounds today on social media, showing that the majority of Americans say photo ID should be required for voting. The segment it was featured in was in response to rapper Nicki Minaj's call for voter ID over the weekend. Joining us to discuss is Mike Leon, lead anchor at the Legal Podcast Network and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent for the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. Good afternoon. Hey guys, Tony, so I want to start with you today. I want you to take a quick look of this clip by CNN.
Take a look here. Favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote.
And yeah, maybe we can put up Nicki Minaj's tweet as well on the screen that the person was talking about. So, Tony, I want to ask you, are you surprised at the findings of this poll, which was from August last year?
No, I'm not. Good afternoon to you both. I think that, again, if there is one thing that Donald Trump has done in the last 10 to 15 years, it has made a couple of 80-20 issues, things that the vast majority of American people understand to be a good thing or understand to be a bad thing given on the different issues, made those the forefront in an era which during the 2010s, they were considered taboo. You weren't supposed to say them. You would be called some kind of an ist or a phobe. This is another one of those issues. Every developed country on planet Earth has voter ID. It's ridiculous that Senate Democrats think this is a winning issue to fight against in 2026. Again, if the Trump administration focused on things like these and, on not particular PR foibles or nonsenses, things that, Micah and I have agreed on or foibles in the past, they've got a pretty good shot at turning some things around. Again, 80-20 issues, good to go. There's no argument that I've heard from the left that's a reason not to do voter ID other than things that are incredibly demeaning and despicable. So, I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Harry Enton's usually got his hand on the pulse when it comes to that kind of polling.
And we'll get to some of those arguments, but in the meantime, Mike, what is your position? Are you surprised?
Good afternoon, guys. Sage Steele last night, the former ESPN anchor who I used to work with when I worked at ESPN, was on Jesse Waters' show, and she said something to the effect, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, and you can look up the clip. She said, "Shut up and dribble now equates to shut up and sing." And she was talking about people at the Grammys because you don't know what you're talking about. And Nicki Minaj doesn't know what she's talking about. She can't even vote. She's a permanent resident. I don't know why she's commenting on something she can't participate in. So we shouldn't be listening to Nicki Minaj for electoral advice. The fact of the matter is that in the state of Florida here, you have to show ID when you go to the voter registration booth. When you go to the booth to actually vote, you've got to bring an ID with you. What type of ID is what people are talking about. In the state of New York, you have to show an ID to be able to register to vote. So we already have these parameters put in place. What the SAVES Act, and I know we'll get into it, is going to do is it's going to affect a lot of people who are broke, who don't have money to get all these additional forms of ID. So it's going to encourage them to not vote, which is exactly what the other side of the aisle wants. They want people to not participate in the process. I get it to an extent. And you're trying to drive voter turnout. Sometimes you don't want to have people turn out. And that's what that act wants to do. It's not about voter ID. It's the type of ID, and it's going to have added costs. But at the end of the day, I don't know why we're listening to Nicki Minaj to quote Sage Steele, who's a conservative pundit, just shut up and sing. We don't need your commentary on this. You can't even participate in this process.
Okay, so Tony, can you respond to that and respond to what Mike is saying about the current election system? Is it enough to guard against fraud?
Yeah, so two things. First of all, I don't need Nicki Minaj to advocate for voter ID. There are a lot of other people who are learned on this particular topic that I can go to. I don't normally cite Nicki Minaj any more than during the last election I cited Taylor Swift. But again, if we're going to put that aside here for a second, regarding the merits of the voter ID situation in general, I don't think we need to say that somebody's too poor to get a voter ID. If they are needing a voter ID to go buy liquor, they need voter ID to go participate in certain activities, they can get a voter ID to vote. The idea that you don't need a voter photo ID because, oh, wow, it's really hard to get one. No, it's not. And if there is some magical, huge poll tax barrier that you're seeing, then yeah, let's make photo IDs easier to obtain via a cost metric. But the idea that someone is stranded in some middle of nowhere place and they can't get a voter ID, it's a tired old argument. It's a racist argument as well. As if Latino and Black people can't get a hold of voter IDs. That's the argument that's usually brought up on the floor of the Senate. I don't need Nicki Minaj to know that maybe, again, like every other developed country on the face of this earth, yeah, photo ID sounds like it would be a decent thing for elections. I mean, given some of the fraud that we've seen in various states over the last couple of years, California, Oregon, and Washington state specifically.
So, Mike, at the end of the day, do you think, for example, in the SAVE Act, would requiring proof of citizenship make elections more secure?
Again, people like a Nicki Minaj can't participate in the process of voting because she's a permanent resident.
Answer the question,
So,
Mike.
I am answering the question, Tony. Give me a freaking break. So there's a perfect example of somebody who can't participate in the process because it's not that easy to vote. And unfortunately, to Tony's overall point, that's spoken like somebody that, is not broke and didn't live in areas like I lived in where people just have to work two jobs to make ends meet. And they don't have time to be able to go afford some of these things. I myself can't afford some of these other things. The fact that this is racist, no, I'm of that race. It's not racist. Some people can't afford some of these things, Tony. Yes, some people truly live in the negative balance where their bank account is showing negative and they have to make money just to get it to even. Correct. Yes, that is correct. I know because I'm living that life. You are not living that life. I think the suit jacket may fool you, but I know about that struggle. I grew up in that struggle.
This is a thrifted suit jacket, Mike.
So I'm not. No, I'm talking about my jacket, not yours. So that's the point. Like I think we're missing the point here. There's already parameters. Now, if we want to unify the system of how we vote federally, like make it a holiday that Tuesday or even that week like other countries do, if we want to do that, cool. I'm on board with that stuff. Joe Biden ran on that. He never executed that. That's fine. But in terms of this voter ID nonsensical thing, we all show forms of ID to register to vote or when we go to the polling precinct, depending upon the state you live in. We already do this already. You all know it. You can go to how do I vote in my state? How do I register to vote? What do I have to bring documents-wise? We all do this already. When we get on a flight right now, we have to show a passport or we have to show our license that has the real ID. Prior to that, we just had to show the license. We already have these systems in place to do this. To say that there's widespread fraud happening in all of these things and that's why we need to change the system is just a false argument.
Okay, Tony, your response, and I want to ask you, are documented cases of non-citizens voting rare?
So to answer the question directly and specifically, you can't have two things at once here. You can't say simultaneously, we already have it and so we don't need it. And then also, no one can get ID. It's so hard and expensive to get it. It's not expensive to get ID in any state. The idea that it's some unobtainable thing because, oh, someone is living paycheck to paycheck, they could never afford to get an ID. Again, I'm willing to say that states need to make measures easier cost-wise for those who are unable to afford a photo ID. Here in the state of Indiana, it costs you a whopping $15 to get a photo ID from the state of Indiana that would qualify for these.
But that's not going to be accepted. That's not going to be accepted to vote as part of the SAVES Act, Tony. That's not going to be accepted. That form of ID,
yes, it would. Yes,
that's not going to be accepted. If you talk to any lawmaker, that stupid analogy that you just gave of $15 is not going to be accepted as part of this bill.
Like being called on
it's not going to be accepted. You just said it's easy to get an ID, and I'm telling you that it's not going to be accepted.
Let me interject here. A passport.
Hold on.
Let me just say,
guys. Tony gave an example. And it's perfect because it's not going to be accepted for you to vote. So cool that I can pay $15 for that ID, but it's not going to be accepted to vote. Tony, did you not read the legislation? It's not going to be accepted. So you gave an example and it's not going to be accepted.
It is going to be
accepted. It's not an acceptable form of ID.
Passport would be accepted.
No, it's not, Tony. Talk to a lawmaker. It's not acceptable.
I am talking to
that form of ID in the example you gave is not acceptable.
Devices. Yes, it is acceptable. It has been provided in specifics before.
All right. Let's move on from this particular point. What needs to be done, Tony, for more people to have more trust in elections?
Again, I think that baseline understandings that every other country participates in is a very good start. Making it so you have to have a photo ID to vote would calm a lot of issues and a lot of fears about certain things not being secure.
Final thoughts.
I don't have any. Campaignlegal.org. Like I said, find out all the information about the SAVES Act. Call your representative. Ask them what's actually going to be in the act. And like I said, it's very, very easy. Google is free, everybody. Just go to your state, find out what IDs you already have to present or what you would have to present if the SAVES Act is actually enacted. But find out what you need to do. I lived in New York. I lived in Florida. We have two different systems, but at the end of the day, you have to show ID to be able to register to vote or to participate in the voting process on Election Day.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for coming on again. Guys, thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
The House approves a funding package ending the partial government shutdown. What the two parties say about funding for the Department of Homeland Security. More after this break.
This land, our America, built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out, even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hardworking neighbors are facing a hunger crisis, many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America, not just a name, but an action. Working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community, and demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it's hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Please call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double an impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double an impact.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. We'd never make a separate dinner. And never do that. We'd never let them sleep in our room. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
Okay, well, I'm not at my desk right now. As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
The House today approved a package providing full-year funding to 6 departments, plus a 2-week continuing resolution for DHS. The funding package already passed the Senate. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson on funding the DHS earlier today, hours before the vote.
So we have 2 weeks now to negotiate in good faith on both sides. The White House and Senate Democrats are going to engage in that, but the House Republicans are as well. We have to make sure we maintain the important parameters here. We can't go down the road of amnesty. You can't, in any way, lighten the enforcement requirement of federal immigration law. That's what the American people demand and deserve. We want dangerous illegal criminals to be sent out of the country, and they've been very successful at that.
The funding package will end the partial government shutdown, now in its 4th day. It will provide full-year funding for the Departments of War, Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, Transportation, and Housing and Urban Development. The final vote was 217 to 214. 21 Democrats approved the package and 21 Republicans rejected the package. 1 Republican did not vote. Democratic leaders say they do not support funding DHS unless the agency agrees with their demands for reform.
Our caucus is united in demanding 4 common sense reforms. Body cameras must be required by law and masks must come off. Judicial warrants are a requirement, not a suggestion. We must have independent investigations to prosecute agents responsible for carrying out abuses. And finally, there needs to be clear guidelines on use of force. Democrats won't rest until we enact real change in this lawless agency.
With the passing of the 2-week continuing resolution for DHS, the House still has to negotiate full-year funding for the department. President Trump has endorsed the funding package, saying the government needs to reopen. The package will now head to his desk for signature. Tyler Robinson, the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk, and his attorneys will be back in court today. Witness testimony will continue over their claim that the entire prosecution team should be disqualified. Today, members of the Utah County Attorney's Office, as well as the deputy prosecutor's adult child, are expected to take the stand. Robinson's attorneys have argued that the personal relationship between the deputy prosecutor and his child, who witnessed the shooting, is a conflict of interest. Utah prosecutors say there is no conflict and they don't plan to rely on testimony from the deputy prosecutor's child. The defense is also expected to argue against having cameras in the courtroom, as well as any clips of the graphic videos of the killing. President Trump today said his administration is seeking $1 billion in damages from Harvard University as part of the ongoing federal investigation. No final settlement has been reached with the university after months of negotiations. In a Truth Social post, Trump wrote that Harvard will have to live with the consequences of what he called their wrongdoings, accusing the institution of past anti-Semitism. Trump said the case should be criminal rather than civil. The comments came after a New York Times report suggesting the administration had dropped its demand for cash, a claim Trump dismissed. Harvard previously sued after federal grants were cut, and a judge ruled some of those terminations unlawful. Several Ivy League schools, including Columbia and Brown, have reached financial agreements with the administration over allegations of anti-Semitism. The Epoch Times reached out for Harvard for comment, but has not received a response. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says ICE agents will start using body cameras in Minneapolis. Noem said the cameras are being deployed immediately and that the program will be expanded nationwide as funding is available. The announcement comes after Senate Democrats and President Trump reached a deal to temporarily extend DHS funding for 2 weeks. That funding bill is currently being considered in the House. Here's the president.
It wasn't my decision. I would have, I leave it to her. They generally tend to be good for law enforcement because people can't lie about what's happening. So it's generally speaking, I think 80% good for law enforcement. But if she wants to do that, I'm okay with it.
Meanwhile, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner has ruled the official cause of death for Alex Preddy is a homicide, citing, quote, multiple gunshot wounds. Preddy was shot during a confrontation with federal officers on January 24th in Minnesota. In another decision, a federal judge has lifted an order that had required federal officials to preserve evidence in the death of Alex Preddy. At the request of state and county authorities, the temporary restraining order had been issued just hours after Preddy was shot last month. Judge Eric Tostrud said the records show federal officials are unlikely to tamper with evidence as the case proceeds. State officials had complained they were denied access to the scene despite obtaining a court order. The judge acknowledged evidence may have been lost early on, but attributed that to safety concerns at the scene. Separate federal reviews into the shooting are also underway by the Justice Department and the FBI. President Trump is set to meet Colombian President Gustavo Petro after months of strained relations. More news after this break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
First time that I went to see him, a lot of stuff came into my mind because I wasn't prepared at all. Another first 3 months of his life were really important, and I wanted to be there all the time for him. First time he was like, "Daddy, Daddy." That was one of his first words. He grew up so quick. He just surprised me every day. He's really smart. I really think he can be an astronaut, president. But I must support him for wherever he wants to be. Whether you want to be a photographer, musician, whatever. As a father, I guess you don't focus on you. I put himself first. That's what a dad does.
Russia fired about 450 long-range drones and 70 missiles at Ukraine in a major attack overnight. The barrage came as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte visited Kyiv in a show of support, and a day before Russia and Ukraine were due to attend U.S. brokered talks in Abu Dhabi. Ukraine says the bombardment hit at least 5 regions of the country. It included a record number of 32 ballistic missiles, specifically taking aim at the power grid. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today accused Moscow of, quote, taking advantage of the coldest days of winter to terrorize people. Temperatures in Kyiv fell to -4 degrees overnight. A private power company said it was the heaviest barrage on the electricity network this year. At least 10 people were wounded. Zelensky said the work of Ukraine's negotiating team in the peace talks will be adjusted after the attack. At a joint press conference with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Zelensky urged allies to send more air defense supplies to bring maximum pressure on Russia.
The Russians once again disregarded the efforts of the American side. There was a request from the U.S. president to refrain from strikes on energy facilities and critical infrastructure. We will contact the American side regarding this matter. I expect that our partners will not remain silent about what is happening. It is critical for everyone to continue to support the defense of our country and the protection of our people.
But I'm absolutely sure that the Americans will have noticed. They see what happened. They will hear this. They will take this also what it is. And that is an attack, again, on innocent civilians, on civilian infrastructure, which I think is unacceptable.
China is under scrutiny over contaminated baby food. A global infant formula recall has traced its source to a biotech company in Wuhan, China. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the case and new steps to address it.
3 major dairy groups, Nestle, Lactalis, and Danone, pulled baby formula products over concerns about cereulide, a toxin made by a food poisoning bacteria. The French Agriculture Ministry said a Chinese company, Cabio Biotech, was the producer of arachidonic acid or ARA oil, at the source of the contamination, according to a Reuters report. Nestle says it has recalled infant formula in nearly 60 countries, one of the largest recalls in its history. Brands affected include SMA, Beba, Nan, and Alphamino, with national alerts issued across Europe, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and the Asia-Pacific region. Health officials say symptoms tied to the toxin can include vomiting, diarrhea, or unusual lethargy. Signs may appear within 30 minutes to 6 hours after exposure and typically resolve within 24 hours. Cabio Biotech is a major supplier to both international dairy companies and leading Chinese producers, highlighting the global reach of the supply chain. Europe is now tightening its response. The European Food Safety Authority has advised a new maximum threshold for the toxin cereulide in infant formula, proposing a limit of 0.014 micrograms per kilogram of body weight for infants. The agency says very young babies process substances differently and require added protection, with vomiting identified as the key short-term symptom used to set the guideline. Some French producers have already withdrawn additional products following the recommendation. Infant formula safety remains a sensitive issue in China after the 2008 melamine scandal, which affected an estimated 30 million children. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
World leaders, advocates, and faith communities are gathering in Washington, D.C. for the International Religious Freedom Summit. Its goal to assess the state of religious liberty in 2026 and identify where it faces the greatest risk. NTD's Chris Bobb has the story.
At the International Religious Freedom Summit held in Washington, D.C., a panel described on Monday how early signs of religious persecution can become normalized. Specifically, panelists examined how patterns of repression can become embedded in laws, practices, and daily life. They cited the Chinese regime as an example.
it first starts off with the same playbook. You have propaganda, and then it starts going into the courts. Police start getting, bounty rewards for catching religious believers, and then it goes all the way to the prison systems and even to hospitals with organ harvesting. I think sanctioning the Chinese officials as far down the rung that we can go is an important step. As long as they're local, they're somewhere in the county level, I think that hurts a lot harder than if you go after Xi Jinping. If the persecution of Falun Gong stopped when he was imprisoned and when international media and eyes were on him, then Simon Zhang's mother would still be alive, and Peng Xun would still be alive as well.
The IRF co-chairs warn that when a regime like the Chinese Communist Party normalizes these red flags, people of faith face severe and lasting harm.
Red flags appear pretty early. You start to see governments make statements about certain groups as being, oh, this is questionable, or they start tilting their media. It's like they're preparing their society and their country to persecute this group.
Whether it is in a country like China, the normalization of the persecution, for example, of the Falun Gong community, or Uyghur Muslims, or Tibetan Buddhists. When you get the larger population to lose their sense of shock and outrage and repudiation of that kind of hatred, that's when you can really sort of persecute and harm a vulnerable minority with a lot of impunity.
They also shared how the United States can respond.
We can use global Magnitsky sanctions against individuals and leadership. You can use broad sanctions against the entire government, or you can even go as far as what President Trump did in Nigeria and bomb places.
The summit continues Tuesday, and organizers are already looking ahead to Wednesday's Congressional Advocacy Day, when participants will take their message to Capitol Hill. They're planning to do so through briefings, a public press conference, and meetings with lawmakers focused on protecting victims of religious persecution. From Washington, D.C., Chris Bobb, NTD News.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani has been working to address the death toll due to hypothermia. Temperatures below 32 degrees have been an issue raised as some believe the mere ending of homeless encampments may have added to the death toll. NTD Sean Marshall has more details.
During a press conference on Monday, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani said 16 people have been found dead during the recent stretch of below freezing temperature weather. The city has been introducing more warming beds and homeless shelters since the beginning of the cold snap. Preliminary findings show hypothermia played a role in 13 of the cases, and 3 of these deaths appear to be overdose deaths. Some critics claim that Mamdani's decision to stop the sweeping of homeless encampments in New York City is the cause of homeless deaths in the cold. After the conference, I traveled to different popular homeless encampment areas around Manhattan to report how the situation looks. Most areas did not have as many homeless as reported by other news outlets during previous weeks. But at one known spot across the street from the United Nations building, I found someone sitting under a blanket that seemed to be motionless, so I called 311 Code Blue for him. Code Blue in New York City means it's 32 degrees or colder, and people are urged to call the phone number 311 for any people that appear to need assistance from the cold outdoors. I didn't record the incident out of respect for the paramedic team and the homeless person. It only took 15 minutes for paramedics to arrive and to check on the man, who was not happy about the paramedics touching him, to check if he was alive and responsive. The man began yelling obscene words at the paramedics, who quickly left at the homeless man's wish before he might decide to get violent, as he seemed to get angrier the longer they stayed. It's now the person's choice whether or not they wish to go to a help center like this one, now that homeless encampments are not currently being swept.
A severe cold front continues to bear down on our city. Today is our 11th consecutive day of below freezing weather, and we could very well be in the middle of the longest period of consecutive sub-32 degree weather in our city's entire history.
Many of the homeless on the streets make the claim of past bad experiences with violence and theft being the reason for not staying in homeless shelters. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
President Trump is hosting Colombian President Gustavo Petro for a White House meeting today. That's after months of high tension between the two leaders. More news after this break.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. But a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did.
Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor during February Heart Month, and your first month's gift will be matched.
Thank you.
I debate all day. It's what I do. But there are some things that are undebatable, like your mental health, my own mental health. I was in a dark place when my brother passed away in a car accident. I've never been more devastated than the day I lost my mom. I was depressed, miserable, in ways I never imagined. I reached out, and my sisters came, my pastor, my therapist. They helped me get through it. I found that the more I spoke up, the healthier my mind became. The chaos that was in me began to subside. I was more focused, clear. When you love your mind, you can go so much further. That's not up for debate. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org.
President Trump is meeting Colombian President Gustavo Petro at the White House. Joining us to discuss is Santiago Vidal Calvo, policy analyst for the Manhattan Institute. So can I just start off asking you, what is on the line for the U.S.? And can you also talk to us about what is on the line for Petro?
Well, thank you so much for the invitation again, Don. So essentially, this meeting is going to establish a bunch of talking points for both countries. One of the main ones is going to be the security agreement between the U.S. and Colombia, but also the relationship between both countries. As we know now, after the tariffs incident, both Colombia was very impacted by the threats from the United States on the tariffs, but also secondly, a security agreement that is very much in place from decades ago. Decades of partnership between the United States and Colombia, where they have both cooperated on drug trafficking enforcement, but also on procedures to eliminate and reduce the production of cocaine in Colombia and in other areas. One of the issues that could also arise is the Venezuela relationship, how Petro is placed in the region to negotiate a transition in Venezuela, and of course, how do the actions of the United States in Venezuela play a role with Colombia in the coming months?
Okay, so as you're aware, Colombia is still a hotbed of cocaine production, a primary source of this illegal drug. And President Trump has warned Petro before, saying that, you know, he better wise up or he'll be next. But however, there seems to be a shift in tone now, with President Trump saying it was an honor, great honor, in fact, to speak with Petro. What do you think about that?
Well, this might be part of a diplomatic strategy. And let me just explain it to you. Under the Petro presidency in Colombia, we have never seen numbers on cocaine production like we have in Colombia right now. Both production of coca leaves but also the production of cocaine have increased dramatically during the Petro presidency. And this is because Petro has removed a bunch of high military ranking members on Colombia that are very well positioned to do cocaine intersections or to remove cocaine fields. He has also removed a lot of security parts with the United States that were there to prevent the production of cocaine. So during these procedures that he have eliminated over the last years, we have skyrocketed cocaine production inside of Colombia. What currently is going to happen is in this conversation, this might be a diplomatic strategy to try to appease to Petro's leftist instance. Remember, Petro was in New York just a couple of months ago calling for the insurrection of the armed forces of the United States against Trump. Okay, these are two people that do not like each other, but this might be very well a meeting like what happened with Madani. Let's keep the diplomatic aspect intact while we try to negotiate a better future for both countries.
Okay, so you're saying this is a strategy perhaps by Trump to be more friendly to Petro. What do you think are some of the plausible outcomes for this meeting?
Well, hopefully both presidents leave the meeting with some concrete goals or achievements. Petro only has a couple more months in power, but he can do a lot for the next president of Colombia. And of course, the United States is going to prefer a pro-American candidate to be in the presidency of Colombia whenever that election happens. So right now, what Petro can do is set up the country well for success in the future. I think that's what the Trump administration is likely going to hammer down in this meeting. Security agreements. Let's continue to ramp up the seizure of cocaine in the territory and to agree to restart a lot of the recultivation programs that were there from years ago before Petro, okay, where they can remove a lot of the cocaine production for other viable agricultural procedures. And this meeting hopefully also leaves with the United States having a stronger trading partner in the region, but also one that is going to back them up with actions whenever they need to intervene in Venezuela, both diplomatically, but also politically now that there is a transition period on board.
Okay, what is the impact of Venezuela's situation right now on Colombia?
Well, right now, as I've mentioned before, Petro was an ally of the Maduro regime. He failed to reject the election that happened on 2024 and failed to stand up against Maduro. He's an open ally. There are open investigations, but also allegations that Maduro financed a lot of the Petro campaign. And we have seen this from many of his whistleblowers inside of the government that have spoken out about this rampant corruption. Right now, what this could happen is that a transition in Venezuela could leave Petro very much on the wires of major investigations with the Maduro regime. And many information could come out of the Maduro regime that supports that Petro was in fact an aide, but also member and ally of the Cartel of the Suns or adjacent organizations. So what we currently need to happen in Venezuela is that for Petro to leave this position of the presidency untouched by the Venezuelan problem, he needs to aid the United States as much as possible in a transition period, put pressure into the Delcy Rodriguez regime, and also aid at military security that is going to happen both at the border, but also internationally with drug trade.
So given what you said just now, what other tools actually that the U.S. has at its disposal that is the most influential or has the most sway over Petro?
Well, the best tool that the United States has is that the day that Petro is no longer president, they can prosecute him for any charges on narco-terrorism that they deem or find in his profile. Right now, Petro was sanctioned by the OFAC a couple of months ago. He has open investigations by the United States. This is not a precedent that we're talking about in the same term as a normal precedent in Europe or in other areas of the Western world that is untouched by narco-terrorism. Petro has a lot of ties to narco-terrorism. So right now, what Petro can do is try to clean up his mess before he leaves, because the day that he loses that presidency status, he's going to fail to meet all the standards of international law and protection of amnesty for political leaders. And he could be very well in position for prosecution of the United States, just like Maduro. So what currently needs to happen is Petro needs to cooperate with the United States. He needs to find a way to clean up Colombia before he leaves and try to leave with a better face of what he's currently today.
Okay, Santiago, very professional analysis today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
The creator of Notepad++ says his software now has stronger security controls after it was targeted by hackers. He says he believes the Chinese regime was involved in the cyber attack. NTD's David Lam reports.
The developer of Notepad++ said on Monday that hackers connected to the Chinese regime hijacked his software's hosting platform and sent malicious updates to users. The breach occurred between June and December 2025. Not to be confused with Microsoft's Notepad, Notepad++ is a similar text editor that's been in operation for more than 2 decades. It's popular among the computer programming community globally for its extra features. Don Ho, a developer based in Paris, said that according to security researchers, the perpetrators behind the cyber attack were likely associated with the Chinese regime. Ho said this would explain the highly selective targeting observed during the campaign. This cyber attack comes amid the artificial intelligence tech race. U.S. lawmakers have repeatedly cited national security concerns posed by foreign adversaries, including the Chinese Communist Party and DeepSeek, the AI company based in Hangzhou, China.
One example, DeepSeek, which used distilled U.S. models to advance its own platform, now linked to censorship, propaganda, and military use.
The developer of Notepad++ said that even after it cut off access to its servers, the perpetrators were able to redirect people to malicious servers. They did so by exploiting the update verification process in older versions of the program. The security was strengthened in December to block further attacks. The Notepad++ website is now on a new hosting platform with stronger security practices. David Lamb, NTD News.
Gold and silver staged a sharp rebound today after a historic sell-off. The upswing lifted global mining stocks and precious metal funds. Spot gold climbed more than 5% to near $4,900 an ounce, while silver surged over 9%. The rally helped push major mining shares higher in London and boosted U.S.-listed silver ETFs ahead of the opening bell. Analysts say long-term demand for gold and silver remains strong. And Netflix executives Ted Sarandos faces a Senate hearing today over his company's proposed acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery. Lawmakers are expected to question him about how the company's $82.7 billion deal would affect competition in the streaming industry. Warner Brothers Chief Strategy Officer Bruce Campbell is expected to testify as well. The Senate can't stop the acquisition, but the hearing will allow lawmakers to ask questions about how the transition or transaction would affect consumers, employees, and competitors. The Justice Department is reviewing the deal along with a competing hostile bid from Paramount Skydance. Paramount has argued it will have an easier regulatory path to approval. However, Warner Brothers has repeatedly rejected Paramount's offer. Walt Disney has named a new CEO. The head of Disney's theme parks, Josh D'Amaro, will take the position. He will take over for Bob Iger at the company's annual shareholder meeting in March. Disney also named entertainment co-chief Dana Walden as chief content officer and president. Current CEO Bob Iger has been trying to retire for years. After stepping down, the CEO returned in 2022 to replace his hand-picked successor, Bob Chapek, as business slowed during the pandemic. D'Amaro is a decades-long company veteran. He's leading Disney's push into the Middle East with a theme park in the United Arab Emirates capital, Abu Dhabi. Once completed, the location will mark Disney's first major new park in nearly a decade. U.S. factory output rises to 4-year high as manufacturing rebounds. We talked to a factory CEO who says he has the blueprint to bring back domestic manufacturing. More after this break.